What does it really take to become the go-to expert in your space? In a world overflowing with content, why do some people become known for what they do, but others struggle to be remembered? In this episode of Edit History, we are breaking down the power of a signature series and why the most recognized experts double down on one thing and how you can do the same. Our guest today is Natasha Pierre, host of the Shine Online podcast and a video marketing coach for small businesses. So, if you've been showing up, creating content and doing the work, but still feel like people don't really know you for what you do, this episode is for you. Natasha, you are known as the video marketing expert. I'm so curious to know for you, Natasha, what was that moment like when you realized this is what I want to double down on? What was that moment like when you realized that?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there were a lot of moments, like when I think back to like when I started creating content, when I started in social media, I just found myself gravitating towards video because I just felt like it was so dynamic. It could tell such a great story, could connect even deeper with an audience, but it was also what business owners struggled the most with. So I was like really obsessed with stories, and then I was really into lives, and then I was really into IGTV and then YouTube. Like I feel like in every era of my business, I've always gravitated towards video. But I definitely think that a shift happened for me in 2020, where I feel like so many people's businesses and worlds were rocked by the pandemic and everything that was going on in the world. And I just found that I really found a lot of momentum for my own business, and people were like, yep, she's the video girl, she's the video girl. And even with Reels coming to the scene, TikTok blowing up, I just found myself wanting to go all in and just like fully dedicate myself to video. So I feel like that was the moment where I was like, I love all social media, but like video is definitely my thing that I want to focus on. And I feel like since that shift and that like really big momentum moment for me at the end of 2020, I feel like that completely kind of changed the trajectory of the rest of my business.
But real talk here, I'm so curious to know, Natasha, was there ever a point when it was like not something you were natural at, or did you ever grapple with any, I guess, insecurity when it came to video? Like, what was your first
Yes.
video experiences like?
The first video experience was avoiding doing video, literally. I started my business while I was still in college, still in university, and I had just so much imposter syndrome, and I just wasn't confident in myself as an expert, as a thought leader, as even the person that was doing the content. I was also worried. I was like, what were my peers going to think? And I just felt like there were so many great people. I was like, who's going to want to hear from me? So even when I started my Instagram reluctantly, even when I started posting content, it was never videos. I was very rarely in my content. But then I remember doing like one of my first stories, and you can literally see I'm like holding the phone, and like the phone is like shaking because I was so nervous. And you could just like, from how I do stories now to then, totally night and day difference. I feel like I would have to go like put on like a button down shirt and be like really professional, and like, which a lot of people know just like isn't my brand. So I really struggled at first to be confident and to feel like what I had to share, what I had to offer was actually valuable and worth sharing. But I think just getting uncomfortable with that and continuing to show up really helped. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, I'm over feeling like I need to look and sound a certain way to create video content. Like, this is boring. This doesn't feel good. And I feel like that was also a shift for me as a creator, where I was just starting to have fun with what I was creating. I feel like that started resonating with my audience.
Was there something that you were afraid people would think of you? Like, was there like a fear of like judgment, opinions when it came to video? Or was it more like, did you think like, did I have any good ideas to share? Like, what was that experience for you?
What was it? Yeah, such a great question. I feel like there was an element of just like not being confident in myself and my own skin, which I feel like a lot of us, like when we're in college and university and just like growing as an adult, like then being visible on top of that was a lot. So I think just confidence in general was something that I struggled with. I do think there was an element of comparison of like I had so many incredible people I looked up to, and I was like, what do I have to offer? What can I offer of value? Like, why would someone want to consume my content over the incredible educators I already follow? So I think there was an element of like comparison and not good enoughness that I felt, which really made me feel like I either just needed to shrink myself or try to sound a different way entirely.
But fast forward to today, I would assume that you are much more grounded, very, very grounded in what you have to share. And I mean, I've seen you on stage, like in person. So like I see the presence that you exude, right? But like, I'm just trying to imagine what the listener might be thinking. It's like, my hypothesis is that they're thinking, but how did you go from that to now being like known for your expertise, speaking on so many stages, both virtually and in person? Like what work did you have to do to go from that to this?
Yeah. I feel like the most annoying answer I can give is that it really was just like doing, right? The less I cared about overthinking it, the more I was just posting stories. And then I was going live every week. At one point, I was literally going live weekly. Then I was starting with podcasting and YouTube. And then I was doing longer form content with IGTV. I was even filming courses. I was doing virtual sessions. Like I was doing all of the work to build my video skills. And so it got to a point where there's still times where I put up my camera and I'm like, I don't know if I still have those thoughts of doubt or where things feel hard or where I feel like it's harder to put my sentences together as I'd like to, right? So that still happens, but I think that it's become such a second nature to me. Like a lot of things in business eventually become, right? We all start our businesses, and at first, everything feels so new, so hard, and we literally know nothing for the most part, right? But then you start to do it, and then it becomes easier. It becomes a little bit more second nature. So I feel like that's the most annoying answer I can give because, yeah, it is about practice. It is about showing up consistently even when it sounded bad, even when it didn't feel good, even when the content was possibly even bad.
This really resonates with me, especially when it comes to my own podcast. So I I started this podcast audio only about 4 years ago, in 2020, and it started off as an audio only, and I really resonate with the sentiment you shared about like you have to put in the reps, you have to actually practice over and over and over again to build whether it's like the mental muscles or even the physical
Hmm.
muscles. And what came to mind as you were sharing was like, I remember like I had to practice like enunciating my words and like using my voice to express emotion. And I remember like there was a time when like I needed to project my voice louder. So I would literally put my hands on my head to like so my chest would open up and I can like then like
Mm.
project louder. But to your point, it's like you actually have to try and see what's not working or what's working so you know how to do better tomorrow or next week. And you really do have to put in the reps. I think my podcast episode delivery, the way I articulate my words today versus 4 years ago, I think
Yeah.
there's like light years in between. I would love to now segue into taking a peek into some of your earlier content pieces. Natasha, what did you choose for us to take a look at in this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I have created so much content, like thousands and thousands of videos, and I feel like the thing that I really landed on is something that I'm actively creating right now, and it is a signature series. It's also something I recommend for all of my clients, something we execute for all of our clients. So it's a signature series. For some context, I started my YouTube channel a few years back. I was kind of inconsistent, and then I really was focusing on my podcast as a part of the HubSpot creators program. And so that's when I started using YouTube and my podcast more succinctly together. And I had the idea of, what if I did a series where I covered one topic in depth in multiple videos, kind of like a Netflix season, right? Where season one has like 5 episodes and it all is kind of around a certain topic or a certain season or anything like that. And so that was something that I started with. I really enjoyed as a creator. I really saw traction with, and it's something that I am currently literally wrapping up right now as for my podcast. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of compare the two, because it's definitely something I could see myself continuing to do, which I know is kind of like a little bit of a spoiler.
Okay, you know what? Why don't we play the OG video or the series?
Okay, perfect. Well, I mean, my first impression is that how I film my videos is a little bit different now. And keep in mind, I'm not only recording the video, but I'm also recording the audio, since my YouTube and podcast strategy are one. And the biggest thing is like the framing is way too close. Like framing is way too close for a few reasons. Reason number one is, when you're doing edits, like a jump cut or a zoom in, my face is going to be like so big. You know what I mean? But secondly, a big part of my strategy is pulling video clips from this for short form. And of course, that's vertical. And this would also be a really tight framing for that. So that's like my first impression, is framing is too tight. And get you a light, girl. I was so reluctant to getting a light for so long because I love natural lighting. And as you see, me as a subject is well lit, but the background is so shadowy. And as you grow as a creator, getting started, these types of things are so small. But I think where I'm at as a creator in my career, those little details and changes really make a big difference. So yeah, that's first impressions just from looking at this. I was like, these are some things we definitely need to tweak.
And before we hit play, for the listeners who might only be watching or listening through audio only, what is the title of this series or this video, and when was it published?
Yes, great question. So this is the Back to Basics series, and it was published I'm pretty sure it was published in May of 2023. And so, yeah, so this is a series where essentially I was sharing like the basics of video content and social media. So there were 5 different episodes that were posted weekly within that time period.
Awesome, awesome. All right, let's dive in.
Woo! When going to build your video content strategy, chances are you've probably heard that having the right systems in place, having habits to help you be consistent, and having goals to guide your strategy are all very important parts of your plan. But what I often find is that the difference between all of these 3 things get really muddled, and people focus so much on creating content that they forget about the systems that need to be in place to help support you for reaching your goals with video content. So my first reaction here that and this like goes back to the muscle of like creating content. I feel like people assume because long form content is longer that the hook, the intro isn't as important. But I actually think it's even more important for actually retaining people through the entire episode. So while I don't think this intro to the episode was bad, I definitely think at this point, how I've been doing my series and how I'm creating my video episodes, we're at the 30-second mark, we would already be like in the video. Like we would be already getting started. So even though I don't think there's anything bad that I said, like I think the context was important, it got people interested, I think it could have been stronger and more concise to get people in, but also retain them a little bit longer. So in this part of the Back to Basics series that I've been doing over on the Shine Online podcast and over on my Shine with Natasha YouTube channel, we are going to be talking all about systems, habits, and goals, and how you can implement them in your strategy to help you save time, optimize your energy, and show up consistently with video, which is like the dream. That is what we all want. So first things first, it's really important for us to break down the difference between goals, systems, and habits, because these are going to be all the pieces that are going to support you with getting results with your video strategy. Speaking of results, let's break down what a goal is. A goal is the result. But yeah, I mean, even just watching this video, like my first time doing a series, me still getting used to video podcasting, because as a podcaster yourself, like being able to read and reference something and do audio only is definitely a little bit different than video. Overall, I feel like with the series, like I'm really proud of the content. I feel like the content flows really well together. So we not only talk about like the workflow and the systems involved. We talk about content pillars. We talk about profile experience, like all those core things that I would consider and like honestly still create content about. So it really is like small tweaks, which I feel like is such a great lesson for anyone listening, of like the small things that I mentioned, of like a better intro, better lighting, better framing. Those are all things that make it better, but are required to show up and create great content, right? Like this content still performed really well. It led me to having my first 10,000 monthly downloads month, which was a really big milestone I was looking for as a part of that program. And these videos still do well for me, posted 2 years ago, which I think is one of the beauties of something like YouTube. So yeah, I think it's just interesting watching this back, is like in a lot of ways, I wouldn't change a ton, but it's really just tweaks and improvements, which I feel like can be a really helpful shift for how people think of their own content.
Even though now, like, it's been almost 2 years since this series was first published, now that you're thinking back, do you remember if there was any moments where you're like, is this series gonna work? Like, was there ever a moment where you looked at the metrics and you're like, oh, it's not doing as well as I like, and you started like doubting the series in itself?
Oh, yeah. I feel like, especially with a platform like YouTube, it is a long game. Like I said, some of these videos are still reaching new people, still getting views, still doing well. But definitely, like sometimes I publish them and they'd only get a few hundred views. Like that was very normal for me with a very small channel. That wasn't my primary marketing channel. But I think it still felt important that like I want to see the entire series through and see how it does, but more importantly, see how it does over time, right? And I feel like that's something we'll probably touch on throughout this conversation. Of I just feel like people are so attached to how a video performs, they post it, and like, how is it doing? Is it doing well? Is it doing bad? But in reality, I think of content as contributing to this bigger picture, this bigger goal, this bigger metric that is more important than how many views did this video get in the first few days of me posting it. Those things are important, but every piece of content you post kind of contributes to the results that you're seeing. And also, I was doing this in correlation with launching my signature program at the time. And so that led to sales, that led to other results beyond just metrics and things like that. So I think it's important to like see that bigger picture.
I love that point about how you really need to sometimes let the content be, especially since it's on YouTube, like let it run its course and not make like snap judgments right away based on like the first, I don't know, 24 hours or whatnot.
Yes.
One thing that's coming to mind before we move forward and maybe look at some of your more recent series and content is when you look back at whether it's this particular series or just throughout your journey online so far, did you ever experience like, I think the way I want to phrase it is, did you ever find your mental health being impacted by the numbers, especially like maybe when the numbers are not performing the way you want within a short timeline, and it maybe it's even part of your launch assets. Like, did you ever find your mental health like kind of like feeling really depleted?
Great question. I mean, I think in general, like social media can impact your mental well-being significantly. I think when it comes to numbers, I've always been okay, I know I haven't always been, but I definitely, when I started getting my confidence as a creator, which I know we've talked about, I feel like I started caring a lot less about all of those things. I stopped caring about my follower count. I stopped caring about great videos and performance. Yes, it was like a nice thing of like, wow, this did well. That's exciting. Or like, why did it perform well? Right? Like really analyzing it. But I feel like ever since then, like I am so detached to numbers in terms of my worth as a creator. And even like if you went to my Instagram, which arguably has my biggest audience, comparably, my engagement is really, really low. I mean, low compared to what it has been in the past, especially when I saw viral reach and growth, which I know is honestly the norm for a lot of creators. And so I don't feel a type of way about that. Like, I don't feel sad that I'm not having thousands and thousands of story views or anything like that. I like to think about the people that I am reaching, the people that are seeing my content, and knowing that those numbers don't really help me in the big picture of things. When I think more of like the money exchange when it comes to content, so launching an offer or even doing a brand partnership and like the numbers are low or like launch numbers are low, yeah, definitely affects my mental health for sure. And I think it's because it, like I said, it contributes to that bigger picture goal. Views are nice, followers are nice, but actually resulting into sales for your program and having a successful launch. And I did all this work for this brand partnership video and it maybe not converting as well or not reaching as well, which is unfortunately very common with brand partnership content. That does definitely get to me. Like, totally. It absolutely does.
Now I would love to actually fast forward to present day. So I know you're working on
Yes.
a signature series right now as well. Tell us about it.
Yes. So I'm currently doing a signature series. It's called Simple Video System Series, which I think is funny how the first video we watched was about systems. And I think that is such a lesson for everyone is like get used to being repetitive in your content. Like you're gonna talk about the same things all of the time. That's the point. That's literally the point. But yeah, so this is like currently in progress. Like the next episode, the final episode is dropping next week. So numbers are still coming in, things are still happening, but yeah, so for context, my first video that I posted of the year, which like I said, video episode, so with my podcast and my YouTube, has gotten like viral for me growth in terms of my channel has like doubled in size. It got like 40,000 views. Yeah, so it's like been wow, like a lot going on, a lot of new people. And so the pressure that I felt with this series, I'm like, okay, there's all these new people on my YouTube, in my community, new people in my audience. I was like, this series has to deliver. Keeping in mind, I already had this series planned before that first video I posted of the year totally went off. So I definitely had a lot of had a lot of nerves, which is so funny to think about. But I think when you realize that you're reaching beyond your audience, there's like a new pressure of like wanting to deliver and wanting to retain them. So I definitely have been feeling all of those feelings. But yeah, I guess like let's maybe watch the first episode and kind of see how that goes. But I think one thing I do want to mention that I've done differently that is going to be something you'll notice through here is I actually attached an opt-in to it. So normally in all my videos, I've added calls to action to my offers or to like maybe like my email list or a free challenge or a funnel or things like that. But for this specific series, I was like, why not try putting an opt-in that was very specific to the series? So I literally made a workbook for the series to help you execute what you're learning. So far, like I said, numbers are still coming in as we're recording this, but got 300 new subscribers to my email list. So I was super happy with that so far. I have no like comparison to compare it with, but I think that's like pretty good considering. And yeah, so I think that's definitely something I wish I would have done sooner in my content. For the past series, I wish I would have created maybe a funnel or an opt-in or something more specific to it that could have maybe brought in more leads that could have converted even higher.
That's such a great, like, tactical, like, insight. I'm like, huh, maybe I should create a series and like have a series specific resource as well. Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm curious to take it to play this video.
Yes, let's get into it.
If you've ever wondered what types of edits should I be adding to my videos, does my grid need to be perfectly aesthetic and curated, and how do people just get their videos perfectly on brand? In this episode, I'm going to be sharing exactly how to edit with a video mood board. A video mood board is essentially a templatized guidelines of exactly how to edit your videos, which will not only keep it on brand and aesthetic, but it also will make editing so much easier, which is why this is part 1 of my Simple Video System series, where I'm
So I know something I mentioned in the first part was how I feel like my intro could have been more concise. And I definitely feel like I did that here of like, yes, I had the intro and kind of like the hook, but I kind of got right into it of like what we're talking about, what the context is, why it's helpful before I even mentioned that you're watching the series and before I even got into things. So I think definitely noticed that shift here. And also, like I said, framing. So definitely the framing's a lot wider. I have like my panel light, which I think is something I've learned. I'm like very new to tech. But I don't just have a light on me, I have a light on my back wall, so it's not so shadowy. So that's like a little like pro tip I've learned along the way. So I definitely think visually this video is a little bit stronger than the other video that I actually have pulled up. Like a little bit different, right? Very close to my face, very shadowy in the background, not as much depth, not as much visual interest versus... You see, I think it looks better.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Is there any, shall we play a little more and see what else we can observe?
Yeah, let's see if there's any other things. Yeah.
where I'm going to be sharing tons of strategies to help you streamline your video content workflow. And we are starting with video edits. Because every time you're creating content, you should not be reinventing the wheel, looking at other people for inspiration for your own edits, or spending hours putting all of your edits together on your content. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to create your own video mood board so you can save tons of time, stop overthinking, and really create video content that stands out on people's feeds. For implementing everything that you're learning inside the Simple Video System series, I created a completely free workbook where essentially it'll walk you through every step you need to take to...
So yeah, this is kind of an example of the opt-in that I shared. So yeah, I think it's not necessarily that every piece of content you create has to have a very specific freebie or opt-in related to it. But I think if you can take what you already have existing, offers, freebies, even your email list, and be like, how can I make this so specific to the piece of content that they're watching? Or if it is occasionally being like, how can I take resources I already have or this content I'm already creating and put it into some type of resource where people can stay connected even more? And I feel like with everything that's been going on with the TikTok ban, especially in the US, I feel like everyone's talking about like email list growth. That is not new to me. I've always focused on like, how can my content get people onto another channel? Ideally my email list, which is my most converting channel, but I like to use my videos to actually bring people there. So I feel like that's something I've always kind of done, but I feel like now more than ever, I'm thinking more intentionally and strategically of different ways that I can actually achieve that.
I see. Yeah. And it sounds like so far having a very tailored resource to the series is like such a good idea. Like not only are you just doing like you're not doing any generic resource to download or sign up for. It's like literally for this series, and I think that's what makes it so enticing. And also the fact that you're talking about a mood board, like that got my ears like perked up. I was like, ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I feel like in the first series, I did mention a few things that are like things that I teach or things that I do with my clients. But I feel like something I did more in this series was really leaning into how I operate and how I think about things and how I talk about things. I think especially, this applies to any industry, but especially with video, I feel like there's so many like popular and viral and hack type ways to talk about things that make it more interesting and better engagement. But I feel like sometimes it's about quality over quantity, right? And so with this type of content I'm creating now, I'm okay with referencing things how I would reference things, not sharing about what people want, but what I actually believe and know people need to hear about. And you'll also notice I'm using tons of client examples and examples of my own content. So I'm like interweaving social proof throughout as well. So I definitely think that can be something anyone listening can kind of learn from of you can you can lean into your signature way of doing things, your way of thinking, your frameworks, like how you do things is good enough for content. It's sometimes just how you package and deliver it. You don't need to sound like everybody else for it to do well.
So I would love to hear your take on like, first of all, what is a signature series, and what are some best practices that you've come across when it comes to signature series?
Yeah, definitely. So, a signature series is similar to how it sounds. Essentially, you're taking one topic, theme, or idea, and you're not just creating one piece of content around it, but you're creating multiple episodes or parts of that series. And there's so many benefits to it. The first is that you're not only able to nurture and reach your current audience with bingeable content, but it's really great for reaching a new audience as well. It also allows you to go deeper instead of overstuffing your content. I feel like this is a mistake a lot of people make of thinking like they have to share 5 million tips in just one piece of content versus can you spread out those tips, those ideas, whatever it is, into multiple things. It really allows you to be known for a topic and really tie it into even your offers or what you do. And also, I just think it makes creating so much easier. As I've been doing this series, it gives me that layer of accountability of like keeping showing up because I already have my episodes planned. It is like in this chronological order, but it also, you're not reinventing the wheel, right? You're not thinking of new topics. You're not thinking of a new way of filming or structuring or doing a piece of content. You're essentially following this formula for each part of your series. And so whenever we start with a client for my video content agency, this is the first thing we do because not only does it hit all of those goals, it can be great for pre-launch, it can be great for funnels, it can be great for just re-engagement and getting new interactions, but it's also a gold mine for repurposing because once you make all this great content, you can easily rework and reuse it for the future. So it's kind of one of those things where whether you're creating on a short form platform like Instagram or TikTok, or if you have a podcast or wanting to do video podcasting on YouTube, it really can work for any format, any industry, and any type of content you're wanting to create.
Oh, that's so interesting because I think my impression of a signature series, maybe because I've consumed so many on Instagram, my initial impression was a signature series looks like one thing I've been seeing, I've seen a lot of like fashion related signature
Mm-hmm.
series. Like they might show one outfit or one week in the life, like what
Yes.
your corporate outfits were, or like maybe what I packed for my lunch yesterday, like for
Yeah,
work or
yeah,
something like that. So I've seen a lot of series like on short form video, but podcasts also interesting. I guess that makes sense since you shared with us your YouTube signature
both of
series.
those were podcasts too. Both of those were on my podcast as well. So, yeah, it really creeps that retention element, right? It's like people aren't consuming your content and forgetting to come back next week, but they're so involved in the series, whether they come in halfway or if they're starting from the beginning or starting from the ending and like catching up, that they're going to consume all of the content, which really gives them like those deeper wins and experience with your brand versus them just watching like this really quick, very surface level video and then just going on to the next one, right? And even to your point, a series can be exactly what you shared of like almost a way of packaging a similar type of idea of like here's a week in my life and you do it every week, or here's my outfit of the day as someone that works in corporate America or whatever, right? Like those are definitely ways that you can do a series, but also you can do a series where it's not just one topic done repeatedly, but it's one topic done like in multiple episodes sequentially, like where you're essentially going into multiple topics in one series versus just the same topic over and over again. So there's kind of different ways that you can implement a series, but it's more important that it's not just one time, but it's reoccurring or there's a certain amount of episodes that are included.
See, and for you at least maybe looking ahead at the rest of 2025, do you think that you will regularly implement a signature series, or is it more like do you have like a quarterly cadence, like once a quarter you do a
Yes.
series, or like what do you think your plans are this year?
Great question. So for my YouTube and podcast, I like to do them quarterly-ish. So like I said, I'm doing one right now, and then I'm already planning on doing one in the summer. That's going to be a 101 series. And what I love about series is often they can be so influenced by frequently asked questions, topics you're talking about a lot. So I was getting a lot of questions of like, can you just do a whole video on B-roll? Can you just do a whole video on talking to camera videos? And I was like, yeah, let me just do like a B-roll 101, a talking to camera 101, and that kind of built out this like 101 series. So yeah, I like to do it occasionally in my cadence, not back to back to back, and that the only way I'm creating content, just to add some like variety in how you're creating. Same thing for a short form platform, right? So I like to do them, maybe they're happening in an entire week or happening one every week, but we like to have breaks in between series. But once you kind of see how series are, you'll notice a lot of creators almost exclusively create in series and have maybe multiple series going at a time, because it's a really helpful structure for, like I said, that bingeability, that accountability for you as a creator. And I can find that it works really well for a lot of different industries. But that's like personally how I like to approach it, is like, yes, it's in the mix, but not back to back to back always.
I love that part about how having a signature series gives you a structure, because I think a lot of people they struggle with the thought of, I don't know what to say. Like, I want to create content. It's Monday. I should post on Monday because I said I would, but I don't know what to say. But it seems like having a structure because of your series, like the premise of your series, gives you some constraints, so it's easier to think of like, oh, this is what I want to say for this part of the series, and then for tomorrow it just like takes a lot of the workload off of the creative process, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. One thing I would love to transition as part of the final conversation for today is how you've built your expertise and become known for video, especially. One thing that I wonder a lot about is, how do people become known for something, right? Because I think for me, one thing that comes to mind is, now that I've been podcasting for 4 or 5 years now, the association in my head of Cheryl Lau, podcaster, is very strong. And I think I've built a substantial enough body of work for people to associate Cheryl, podcaster. But from your point of view, like, how do you think what contributed to you becoming known as the video person?
Yeah, such a great question. I think there was an element of me choosing of like, video, I want to be my thing. I don't want to be the social media person. I don't want to be the Instagram person, which is very much a route I could have went down, but I was like, I want to be a video person. And so I think there was an active choice. I think there was also an element of, I feel like the big theme of this conversation is like, I was putting in the reps, and those reps involved me talking about video content in a million ways. And it's so funny when I look back at my archives, like my old content, I literally was talking about systems, and I was talking about videos, and I was talking about all these things then, before I even knew that's what I wanted to be known for, before I even knew that 7 years later, that's what I would still be creating content about. So I think there was like an active choice, almost like an acting on that choice. And I think with those combined, it's like then people start to have that association with you, which I feel like, going back to when my brand really got a lot of visibility in 2020, it's because people were literally like shouting my name from the rooftops when I still had a pretty small sized audience of like, if you need someone on video, if you need this person, like, Natasha's the person you need to know. And so I think those three things go together, because whenever I talk about like, people want to be thought leaders, people want to be like authorities in their industry, but you aren't one just because you decide to be. You are one because people actually know you as that. And so that starts with all of those little pieces of content that you created that was like building that for me over time, to the point of your example of like Cheryl podcast. So you are known as like a podcaster, right? So I feel like that's really what I've seen kind of a part of my journey kind of lead to where I'm at now, and really being known for that.
I think that just goes to show how thoughtful you've been about building those associations people have with you and creating and really you've established your position in the market as like the video person.
Well, and I think to that point, now that I'm like thinking of something that we talked about is I feel like it comes down to like being bored with your content. Like the two like series we looked at, I talked about video systems for both of those series. Arguably, you could say I am bored from talking about video systems series in series form all the time, right? But I think it shows that to be known for something, you have to be repetitive. You have to say it over and over again. And I think a common mistake people make is that they're constantly pivoting, constantly changing, and experimenting so beyond what they want to be known for that people don't even know what to know them for. They're like confused. They're like distracted. And then the creator themselves, the business owner themselves is distracted by all of the shiny things. And so I think it's such a great example of like, I mean, doing a podcast for 1 year, let alone multiple years, as you know, is a feat. But that's how you become known for that, not being like, I wonder if I just go all in on LinkedIn and maybe I'll still do the podcast, but like, what if I just become like a LinkedIn person? Or like, you could like totally pivot, totally change. Same for me. Like, what if carousels are my new thing? That is like the new thing I am passionate about. But no, it's about being okay with being bored by leaning into what you want to be known for.
Yeah, I just wish we could like shake that into the listener, because I'm sure that there's a lot of folks listening right now who like maybe they've talked about a topic for like 3 months and they're like,
Yeah.
well, no, like it's not working. But it's like maybe not, like maybe it's or maybe you just haven't let it run its course yet,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think people really need to have, I think patience is a good character trait to have, especially when you're building not just your brand, your business, your content platforms, but also building your name around something. I think having some patience,
Yeah.
commitment, consistency, all those are great qualities to have. Okay, so as our final question for today, Natasha, how do you see video changing the world in 2025?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I just feel like people are looking to be connected, which I think 5 years from the pandemic, where I feel like people were craving that connection. They were craving being in company with other people. They were craving that like relief from the world. I actually almost feel like there's somewhat of a full circle moment of people wanting that with video. And so I think people are over the surface level things. They're over content looking and sounding like everyone else. And they're really wanting thoughtful content. They're wanting intentional content. They're wanting content that goes deeper. And so I really think when you're thinking of creating videos for your brand, that is how you change the world with your content, quite literally. And you can really make that deeper impact. I mean, I think of all the videos that have like quite literally changed my life, whether I'm learning something new or trying something new or thinking in a new way, or just like feeling connected to someone's stories. We all have the power to do that with our videos, and doing the surface level trend, caring about the latest feature or platform or anything like that isn't going to help us achieve that. So hopefully that can leave anyone that's listening to this inspired about really what they can achieve with video.
Amazing. Yeah, I think if anyone was on the fence, yeah, they're not on the fence anymore. They're gonna give it a try for sure if they haven't already. Amazing.
Yes.
Natasha, where can people find you and or how can they work with you?
Yes, definitely. So, on Instagram at Shine with Natasha is definitely one of my main platforms, in addition to YouTube, Shine with Natasha as well. I actually have a video and a live workshop coming out about Signature Series next month. So we'll have to link that in the show notes so you can learn more about Signature Series if you're like hooked and like want to make your own. So we can just leave more resources about that.
I did not know you had that coming out. That is
Yeah.
perfect. That is perfect. We're gonna link it. We're gonna link
Right?
all the links down below. Amazing. Natasha, thank you once again for delighting us with your knowledge and sharings. And to everyone, thank you all for being here as always, and I'll see you all in the next one. Let's consider someone who has an incredible career but zero digital presence. So let's say a world-class scientist whose name is buried under their research papers. So as you can see, achievements alone do not automatically translate into being known. You have to actively shape the perception of your expertise, right? You don't become known for something just because you've hit a milestone. It doesn't happen the moment you make a certain amount of money, land a prestigious feature, or even after spending years mastering your craft. Yes, those things can add to your credibility, but they don't automatically make people think of you when they think of your industry. Instead, being known is a deliberate act. It's something that you build choice by choice, idea by idea, until it becomes undeniable that that's what you're known for, right? It's not something that you have to wait for validation for, but rather you decide, right? You define what you want to be known for, then you start showing up like it, right? Long before anyone gives you the permission or the title. But that's where most people get stuck. They tell themselves, oh, I need more time to figure this out, right? They wait for clarity and assuming that the right positioning, the right niche, the right branding will eventually reveal itself. But what happens when you wait? Nothing, right? So think about the people who have been figuring it out for years, right? They're still in the same place. And the only people who gain traction are those who actually commit to a path and refine it along the way. So instead of waiting for clarity, what if you decided to move forward with 70% certainty, right? Because most successful people were not 100% sure when they first started. They just picked a direction and adjusted as they learn. So here's a question to explore. What is a skill or perspective I already have that could be turned into a recognizable brand, right? If I simply talked about it more, right? What's a conversation that I want to lead and not just participate in, right? And let's say even if you don't have the answers to these questions right now, that's not a reason to wait. That's a reason to start experimenting today. Because again, your first choice doesn't have to be perfect, but you still have to make a choice, right? And that's the first step. Now, the second thing to consider is that you don't become known just by posting more, but rather you become known by going deeper than others in your space. So ask yourself this, am I saying something different or just repeating what's already out there? Am I challenging people to think in a different way, or am I just providing surface level advice? Am I backing my ideas with stories, examples, and real world insights, or am I just posting to post? Right? And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is assuming that being known is about being seen more often. But it's really not. It's more about being remembered. And people don't remember you just because you post it every single day, but rather they remember you because your ideas impacted them. It made them think differently. Now, the third thing to remember when it comes to being known for something is that you don't become known for something because you talk about it once or a few times, but rather you become known when you repeat it, when you refine it, and when you reinforce your message until it becomes synonymous with your name. And yet, this is where most people will sabotage themselves. They get bored of their own message and they assume that their audience has already heard it, right? So they switch topics way too soon. They're convinced that they need to keep it fresh. So some questions that you can explore here include, if someone found my content for the first time today, would they immediately know what I stand for? Right? If someone scrolled through my most recent 10 pieces of content, would they see a clear through line, or is it a mix of disconnected ideas? Have I said the same thing enough times that people could literally repeat it back to me? Because if you're tired of your own message, you're probably just starting to become known for it, right? And ultimately, the people who are known have done the work to build their name and reputation piece by piece, idea by idea. They've built a body of work that is so substantial and compelling that other people cannot help but associate them with that topic or subject matter or expertise. So my final question to you today is this. Are you willing to build something that is worth being known for? I'll let you decide. Sounds good? Awesome. Let's get to work. One more thing. If you thoroughly enjoyed this episode and are eager to continue the work, I would love to recommend you to grab the Podcast Content Audit. This is a resource I've crafted to help you audit 9 different parts of your podcast content strategy and identify the specific areas that you can improve on right away to start setting your podcast apart from the rest. The Podcast Content Audit follows our signature framework to building a differentiated and timeless body of work by number 1, becoming known for your thought leadership, number 2, creating immense value for your audience, and number 3, developing your signature voice. You can get the Podcast Content Audit at CherylLao.com/audit. Again, the link is CherylLao.com/audit. Sounds good? Awesome. Let's get to work.